Hello, and welcome back to the Mary Tyler Moore. The snow has fallen yet again. A squall came in a few days ago. We just got the airport all cleared out and de-iced. We got hit with another 5 centimeters last night and then had to go out and clear the runways and taxiways all over again. But now that everything is cleared up, I have something special to share with you today. We are going to be taking a look at a bit of the history of the two cities of Isabella, Sofia, and I've dug up some old footage from back in the vault, and we're going to be taking a look at a bit of the birth of downtown Isabella at Isabella Point. We'll get to see how that was built up back in the day, as well as a song that was very popular about 100 years ago that really made the Tyler more famous, and people began flocking to it, and it led to places like Stanton and Kresge Point popping up, and a great deal of growth in the area because of this song, and you will get to hear that song a little bit later on. But for now, we're going to get the film reel projector set up here. I'm gonna see if I can get it hooked up correctly, and we're gonna get going with some old history of the region. So thank you so much for joining me again here in the very Mary Tyler Moore. So here we go. There. Yep. Got it working. Okay. So here we have a young version of the area. Very little development. Most of the county towns, only Ribble is there. No other county towns are there. Stanton doesn't yet exist. West Sofia, not there. Sofia City Hall, not yet built. We still have industrial Methuselah Rock here. It's a good glimpse of what used to be. And this whole riverbank along the Isabella River is completely empty and has been reserved for development of a big commercial district, so that the products from the industrial area can easily be shipped over to the towers that are expected to rise along the riverbank. Now, this area is the first development, where I imagine anyway, the first development in the area took place, and the reason why that there is such a dense concentration of skyscrapers here is because that was the oldest area, and had become so successful in developing so early on that they weren't all into the historic preservation thing yet. So most of the earliest parts of Isabella's development are no longer in existence. So this is why I didn't want to go and start the whole town out here with a tiny little, saloon and a horse stable and a couple of wood stick houses, and then grow it out of that, because I knew that it was going to be, I envisioned it early on, this megalopolis. So I built out the areas where people would be living first, the industry to support the downtown, and the population to work the industry and the downtown. So this is where I finally came to building out the future of modern Isabella downtown along Isabella Point. So what we have that's going to be built out today is going to be the commercial zone for distributing all of the industry's products. A lot of the towers in the center here are landmark towers, so they don't really require a lot of workers, they don't require goods. But down here is where we're going to be requiring the goods. for the commerce area. I also intended to put an entertainment district, which hasn't gone according to plan, but that's for another episode. But for now, we do have the modernized train station in downtown Isabella, but the whole point is going to be built out. It has excellent access to both the farmlands and the airport, as well as the whole city. Now, a lot of this building didn't happen organically, and as I said, that was because it was master planned. But as you can see, it is before Milltown, it is before Kresge Point, it's before a lot of the area was really developed, and before a lot of that was even envisioned. It was already a miracle that the area had become this populated and still running properly on my computer. So it was interesting to see the development of this downtown, and finally gets the towers that it deserves to get some of the more skyline material, which it didn't really have a great deal of yet at that time. So digging a little bit deeper into the history of the region now, we began Sofia and Isabella as two sister cities butted up against each other here along this main avenue, Swift Way, which used to be a highway and is now a boulevard. The cities grew out extensively. However, the Tiergarten was placed right between them right from the get-go. Down here in Isabella Point is where more frontier-esque town would have been, with the buildings that currently exist would have been, built there first. So we can just sort of envision this as the whole historic downtown had already been wiped out for new development. But one thing remained the same throughout the downtown point of Isabella, is that there was a communal ground for worshipping all faiths. It didn't matter if you had a faith at all, but you were welcome in this space to practice your beliefs in your ways with respect to all others practicing their faiths there. So this interfaith center has always been sort of the epicenter of the society of Isabella. But we just have a brand new building here. It's really a cathedral from Tokyo, and a beautiful one at that. But for the purposes of Isabella, it is an interfaith center. And right outside of it, there's going to be a beautiful plaza where people can congregate, can be a place for celebrations. If people get married, this can be where their photos get taken. It's just a great communal space for everybody to partake in the social fabric of the community. These plazas and spaces, I'm sure by now it's common knowledge that these social hubs really contribute to the fabric of a society and make a community a really livable space. And if you look at communities that don't have a great deal of public meeting places, they're usually not the most desired place for people to live. And places that do encourage these social gathering points, they're the places that people usually tend to lean towards wanting to move to. It really is important within the entire Tyler Moore that we have lots of public spaces, as you've seen in the previous episode when we built 3 public plazas in Malalaton. But it was also very important in the rebuilding of modern downtown Isabella that there be an extensive amount of spaces and places for people to meet up, because otherwise they would be trapped in a concrete, not paradise, a concrete nightmare, really. Nobody wants to live in a space that's just sidewalks and streets and cars and glass and steel without any greenery. It's definitely not a healthy environment. We all know that for sure. But they had the foresight in building out modern Isabella to include lots of spaces so that we could build up a great deal of density. Now, as said before, not a lot of downtown is actually going to be, well, not a lot of the tall towers are going to be commercial buildings, so it's not going to be too terrible. But on the area just to the right of the screen, you'll notice in between the tall skyscrapers of downtown and the football stadium and out to the industrial area of Methuselah Rock, that's going to be the area where most of the retail shops and the commerce is located. The area over to the left of the interfaith area, across the Frisbee Green over there, the soon-to-be Frisbee Green, that is, that's where most of the skyline towers are, and most of those will have a block services of either residential or office in them, so it doesn't contribute to a lot of noise, and it doesn't drain any more of our produced goods that could be going to the other shops along the way. So when Isabella was being built originally as a frontier town on the Isabella River here, the Sophia River on the other side of this peninsula had another development, and it was a very different town. It was really for the citizens who didn't want to live in Isabella for whatever reason, but still were moving to the region. It was the second city of the area, so to speak, and it became the alternative in the region. So the area that is now known as Peace Square in Sofia is where the first development of that town was. It really grew out rapidly to its boundary with Isabella, and that was what prompted Isabella to really rapidly grow towards its boundary point as well. There was sort of a race to get to the center line, basically, and see just how impressive each city could be. As you can recall from a past episode, Sofia was trying to become the county seat of the region for a very, very, very long time. So they've always been sort of in competition with each other. Real life backstory, Sofia and Isabella, that the cities are named after, are actually sisters in real life. And so the Sofia is very different than the Isabella, and they're often butting heads with one another. And these two cities very much do the same. They compete with each other. They try to be better than the other at every moment. So there's this great dynamic between them that keeps pushing each city to keep going and growing. And as a result, as each city developed towards the boundary point with the other city, they built it up even bigger and denser and more impressive and, more sparkly than ever before, to try and outdo the other. And this is why along that center road, the Swift Way that divides the two cities, there is a cluster of fancy big skyscrapers from across generations, because they've always been trying to sort of outdo one another along their boundary line, sort of a friendly competition between one another. But this, in earnest, is downtown Isabella, where the densest development and the longest held settlement in the area is. Now that we have some of the smaller buildings built out, we're going to start out with some of the first of the tallest skyscrapers. And for those of you who might have wanted to get a closer look at the skyline of Isabella, now is a good time to see how it came to be, and you'll become a lot more familiar with to me, when I see it, it looks quite striking. To you, it might look more of a jumble because it is very busy. But with this, hopefully you'll be able to understand a bit more intimately all of the little puzzle pieces that make up Isabella Point. And then, I don't know, maybe you'll be able to come up with your own storylines for each of these, massive company headquarters and condo skyscrapers that go up here. It's also a bit of insight into my aesthetic brain. You can understand how my sense of aesthetics works by watching this too. If you're interested in that, well, then you get to learn. I don't assume anybody would be interested in learning how my brain works. But if you are, this should be your cup of tea. Now, along this riverside here, when the water was higher, it was a very swampy area, so the parcels of land are split up in such a way that a lot of the development doesn't back onto the swampiness here. This is where I eventually built out a cable car to go around it, but the song that we're about to hear is all about back in the day when there was an old shambly wooden boardwalk down there. And it was very common for lovers to go take a stroll down there on a pleasant summer evening. And we're going to hear a bit more about that right about now. When the stars are bright and the moon is right and the breeze is at your back.
When the birds are asleep and you don't hear a peep, but the midnight trains click clack.
When the town's shut down, there's nowhere to go around, but you need to go out for sure.
When there's no show to go, when the world is moving slow, take your baby down to the moor.
Oh, the moor is where you'll be, wrapped in harmony. You might even hear a crowder in the moonlight. There's always much to see. You can even climb a tree and look over all the town. What a sight!
What a sight, what a sight, what a sight.
Where the lovers two by two whisper I love you. Where the wind in the trees plays a lullaby. You'll even find that you may break into a soft shoe and dance the night away with the fireflies.
The fireflies
Strolling by the bay or in the county farms, don't fret about the day. Warm your sweetie in your arms. Your love is here to stay, on that you can be sure. So throw your cares away on the merry Tyler Moor.
Without your love, it's so dreary all the day.
All your luck disappears along with your pay.
And your heart sits so heavy in your soul.
There's no way to get around it unless you've really found it.
That love that makes you whole.
Strolling by the bay or in the county farms, don't fret about the day. Warm your sweetie in your arms. Your love is here to stay, on that you can be sure. So throw your cares away on the merry Tyler Moor. So if you don't have a baby and your heart is feeling blue, don't sit around and fret, you know just what to do. Get up off your fanny and soon you'll know the cure. Shuffle and shimmy-shammy yourself down to the moor. strolling by the bay, or in the county farms. Don't fret about the day, warm your sweetie in your arms. Your love is here to stay, on that you can be sure. So throw your cares away on the Mary Tyler Moore.
Well, safe to say, music tastes have changed a great deal in the past century. Thank goodness for a lot of wonderful development in music. And all the wonderful artists that we've had ever since the founding of the Tyler Moore long ago. But the region really was a popular place at the time, and the song romanticized it. It really made it seem like a Dickens novel. You could, walk along the moorlands on a, windswept harbor and a cold gray sky, or a beautiful summer evening, and walk arm in arm with your lover, and just sound at that time, before regular air travel, before television, before smartphones. Life was very different, and going for a stroll along the swampland on a rickety wooden boardwalk was seen as a wonderful adventure. And it, throngs of people strolled along the boardwalk regularly, and this really highlighted the area as better than any other city. And not a lot of cities had this sort of thrilling boardwalk that they could stroll along. 1920s Chicago, they had some lovely things, but Lakeshore Boulevard wasn't quite what it is right now. They didn't have Millennium Park. It was a very different city. New York, they had Central Park, definitely, but not quite the park-filled land, if you can call it that today, that it is today. Not as tourist-geared, let's say. Not as environmentally geared. It was a much dirtier, noisier place. So a smaller city out on the moorland where you could just go for a lovely stroll and throw your cares away, and this sort of being an attitude in the region where, life quality comes before capitalism and, earning a buck. Here you could have a good quality of a modest life and have an entertaining area in which to live. And so became its reputation. And it rapidly grew from there. And that was when the two cities really met up in the middle. Isabella became squeezed for space and development and could not expand any further. So it ended up with a couple of different things happened there. There was sort of a satellite city of Plattersville that popped up across the river, sort of like a little growth. I like to think of it as like the Buddha's bump. The idea that the Buddha's brain was so big because he was so smart that his brain kind of grew a second brain to add more storage capacity. Plattersville was sort of the population version of that for Isabella. They needed the space, they needed the workforce population. So, across the river came Plattersville, mostly a bedroom community. As well, we had Stanton had merged in with Sophia, had gone from being a tiny little settlement into a giant expansion that really nearly doubled the footprint of the city. And Kresge Point across the river as well developed out and filled in quite quickly. At this point, because the city of Isabella could not expand anymore, but there was so much demand. They did not want to create the entire peninsula to be this giant, swath of giant skyscrapers and cramming everybody into towers. That wasn't the way they wanted to see the city develop. So they merged with Methuselah Rock. They reached a deal with the town of Methuselah Rock, and Methuselah Rock became a neighborhood, a district within the city, and development began very quickly. Redevelopment of the industrial district and the moving of the mines out of the city center and out to the hills really accommodated a great deal of growth for Isabella. Whereas Sophia had a lot of space around it and gobbled up a lot of parcels of land out there, including Stanton and West Sophia. Soon, in a future episode, you're going to be seeing how the development of the new modern Moor is coming to be. If you watched the past double-header crossover episode about parks in both the Tyler Moor and the Tyler Moor East, you'll have seen that I have developed out along the shore of the Isabella River, along Isabella here, a whole boardwalk area, a giant quayside that I built out with bike paths and pedestrian paths all over the place. And there we will be creating a beautiful oasis in the city running along the river, where there will be a variety of entertainment options and spaces and biomes for people to explore and enjoy. There will be forest paths, there will be sort of a midway carnival area, there will be an amphitheater, there will be all kinds of beautiful amenities along the river, gorgeous landscaping. It's really going to be done to the nines. So until that is finished, we're going to have a lot of time spent together building that. And I do want your suggestions on what you'd like to see down there as well, because I want this whole area to appeal to everybody, not just people like me. So we will see a great deal of building out for that coming up, but that won't be happening until this most recent snow melts and we can get some shovels back in the ground and get to planting our parks, and that will be when we really get to building out a beautiful riverside park for the whole of the Tyler Moor. Here is just a bit of extra footage of me trying to get the subway system working properly. The subway system in the Moor, really, I have to admit, is a disappointment. A major disappointment to me. Ridership is abysmal. Some lines have 4 passengers. Not 40, not 14, but 4 passengers on an entire subway line. It's absurd. That is something that hopefully in future we can reach a consensus on what to do to remove it and push all the traffic onto the streetcar system, which is also underutilized, or keep it and try to find a way to correct it so that it can work more efficiently. It's spread out across the city organically, so there are a lot of imperfections, and a lot of these imperfections, I fear, may be difficult to detect, and it's a bit like rewiring an old house. I worry how treacherous it could be when I dive down into the subway to rebuild it, or to fix it, or just to get rid of it completely. We will see in future. But for now, you get some great old footage of Isabella, you get to learn a bit more about how it came to be. You learned a bit more about what it is going to be, hopefully, in future. And you certainly get a sense of the fabric of the city, how it was meshed together, and maybe the cities of Sophia and Isabella are just a bit more distinct to you now, and maybe you feel a bit more closely tied to it. I don't know. I think, personally, when I get to know a place or a person much better, I tend to relate to them in ways, and that makes me feel a bit more like home when I'm around them or that place. So I guess in a way, I'm hoping you feel a bit more at home here when you get to learn more about the old time history of the region, because this is a place for everybody. We can all feel at home here. It's a safe space, and it's a fun place. And there are so many endless activities, ways that we can fix the subway system, ways that we can build a beautiful parkland, ways that we can accommodate waves of people in search of a better home. It's going to be fun, it's going to be informative, and I hope it gets to be engaging too. And that about does it for the old stock footage from the vault. Here we are at Mount Michoud, and there is a whole trainload of people going off to the resort to start skiing early in the morning. This is the train line, now fixed up a bit. It's still completely imperfect, but it works a little bit more realistically. And it does offer some killer views, so we're going to go for a little slope down here. It's a different way to ski down the mountain, on the rails instead of your skis. But I just want to thank you so much for joining me. And hopefully you'll be back for more, because there's a lot more as we develop out Malalatin and the whole Isabella River Walk. Really excited to see how that gets to grow out and become something really beautiful. And I'm really looking forward to doing that with you. So thanks for joining. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And if you feel so inclined, I would appreciate it if you liked or subscribed or commented. Any way that this video can reach more people, so that people who like this sort of thing will be able to find it more easily. That would be greatly appreciated, both by me and those people out there looking for these kinds of videos. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me. Take care, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.